Very much. I hope I'm audible. Thanks so much to the previous speakers. We have spoken quite eloquently on the different topics and issues assigned to them. I guess from the three previous speakers, what we do get, in my view, is that if young people don't discover their agency and use it, I mean, the destiny of this country is in big trouble. I think it's the late Joshua Nkomo said Zimbabwe will not die. Its young people will save it. So, in my view, it is this generation of young people who should. Give credence to or reality to come make the words of Dr. Nkoma come to pass. But anyway, speaking about public finances in the 2026 budget, I just wanted to, because I prepared a lot of stuff, but because I mean, in the interest of time, these issues. Someone said, I think it was Dr. Ebo who said the budget process is cyclical. It's a cycle, right? There's a process of when the budget is presented, but there were consultations that were done 2 3 weeks ago by the relevant committee of parliament, and today the minister of finance was meeting with parliamentarians and talking about the 2026 national budget. But for us young people, I think what we should know is that we can write to the minister of finance, economic development and investment promotion. If you go on their Twitter page or on Google, just say Minister of Finance Zimbabwe, you will find an email where you can submit your views of what you actually want to see in the 2026 national budget. I think that's one thing that we must be aware of and that we should make reference to in this space, that the opportunity to participate in the making of the national budget, number one, is there. The opportunity to monitor the national budget is also there. That is, when the budget becomes law, when Parliament passes the Finance Bill and Finance Act, we have the opportunity to monitor, and we have different social accountability monitoring tools that we can use to track. The first one is to make good use of our Parliament. I hope we're all aware that Parliament has different committees in line with the existing government ministries that we have. So each, but at law, I mean, the Public Finance Management Act says the every ministry, government agency, right, ministry, department, and government agency must submit audited financial statements to the relevant portfolio committee of parliament, right, each and every quarter after every 3 months. And that data, that information is public information. It's public information. So that's another way we can use to track budget performance, to monitor the budget. So once we submit our views, we listen to the minister present the statement in November in parliament. We check whether what we said was incorporated in the budget or not. If those things were not incorporated, we have an opportunity as well to lobby our parliamentarians so that they can either pass or not pass the budget. Remember, Parliament at the end of the day is the power. If Parliament then says we are not passing this budget because 1 million young people wrote to us and said we do not agree with the contents of the budget because that's not what we spoke about, that's not what we wrote to the ministry about. Parliament is that power. But in most cases, as us as young people, we're not aware of these avenues that we can use. That if imagine every MP being inundated by at least 100 text messages after the budget is presented that no, approve or do not disapprove. Do not disapprove because they do not include 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right. So these are some of the opportunities that we have in our context to discover our agents and to use it. For the 2026 national budget, we are of the view that this country needs to commit at least 2% of GDP, gross domestic product, to research and development. Because if we are saying the wage bill is too high and it is putting a strain on our public finances, the government can now give us the services we need, your clean water. And among, I think it's a matter we spoke about social and economic rights found in chapter 4 of the Constitution. If the government is constrained, as it acknowledges in the BSP, we then argue that this country needs to invest in research and development at least 2% of GDP. Why? Because if you invest in research and development, it means you are supporting innovation. And it is innovation that drives entrepreneurship. It is innovation that drives job creation. So imagine a Zimbabwe that invests 2% of its gross domestic product to R&D where the government and the private partnering with the private sector can put money into research. That means our young people are going to be skilled in relevant skills necessary for rapid economic industrialization. So we are talking about the establishment of industrial parks when you slash or when you reduce the wage bill. Your argument to government is it's not just a matter of rationalizing the wage bill. After rationalizing the wage bill, that money should go towards industrial parks where factories will be set up so that we process our gold, we process our lithium, right? Imagine if we are to strike a deal with the Chinese that says in Goromons, in Buera, and in Bikita where they're mining mineral, where they're mining lithium, we are going to make sure that lithium or batteries are made there. It will be a product of what local content development through research and development. So the budget should cater for that and should be clear in terms, especially when the government is calling these minerals strategic minerals, lithium, nickel, manganese, strategic mineral for the so-called just a economic transition, right? So that's very, very important. The issues to do with R&D. The second point, when we write to the ministry, is reform the tax system, because the tax system in its current form penalizes households and individuals. So one of the one of the resolutions, ironically, that I agree with ZANU-PF is that the IMTT 2% tax should go. That's one thing we should write to the minister, because the minister seems to be defying his own party now. Because today he was telling parliamentarians that I can't remove that tax, but there needs to be pressure because that tax is destroying disposable incomes. Right. Number three, this country needs a monocurrency, and the budget should be clear on that. Are we using the American dollar or are we using the Zim dollar? There's no country that can prosper if it uses many currencies. So the budget should pronounce itself clearly that we need a monocurrency, which everyone trades in this country. But if you are to introduce the Zim dollar, whatever we're going to call it Zig, we have to ensure that there's productivity, because that which anchors money is number one, trust, number two, productivity. So we go back to the issue of how much is going to be how much is going to be given to the Ministry of Industry and Commerce, how much is going to be allocated to strategic and employment intensive state-owned enterprises, SOEs, because SOEs are one of the avenues through which the government can create jobs. But if the SOEs are indebted, are underperforming, and are not managed by the principles of good corporate governance enshrined in our own constitution, then the SOEs will continue to be a burden on the nation's balance sheet. That's when you see the Cisco Steel Data Amendment Bill. That's when you see the RBZ Data Amendment Bill, which are now acts of parliament. The assumption of debt that belong to SOEs by the government, in essence, by the people of Zimbabwe. And we are captured in the pro-cyclical vicious cycle of poverty. So the national budget should speak to how SOEs are going to be reformed, not privatized. Reformed so that they create jobs, employment intensive SOEs. We are friends with the Chinese in Zimbabwe. Our policy since 2000 has been look east. Why is it that since we have looked east for the past 25 years, we have not seen rapid industrialization in this country? But the Chinese introduced the Made in China policy in 2015. And they said by 2025, we should be having 30% of share of global manufacturing. And if you look at World Trade Organization figures, IMF figures, World Bank figures, you realize that China constitutes 30% of global manufacturing. 30%. So why is it that the Made in China policy was a success, but our Look East policies has seemingly failed, yet we call them our all-weather friends? So the national budget should speak to how we are going to in my view, a renegotiation of all mining contracts so that this country stops
Hello, Brother Mlambo.
exporting raw materials.
Hello, Brother Mlambo.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
can you wrap up so that we can go back to Dr. Swanda to wrap up what he was trying to say, and also
Okay.
maybe to Shandel to wrap up what she wanted to say and give parting shots, and also to Namatai, so that we can let
Mhm.
Yokai open the floor.
Okay. So I would the last things that I want to talk about. I spoke about the establishment of industrial parks and agro processing clusters. Right? Zimbabwe is one of the countries with a lot of dams in Africa. But sadly, we are still food insecure. Today it rained in Harare. I wonder how the city of Harare is harvesting water, the little water we're getting in the context of climate change. But we can't industrialize, we don't have sufficient water, for instance. So harness the little water through water harvesting. Right? The budget should make provision for those things. The budget should make sure that 15% of the total budget goes to healthcare in line with the Abuja declaration, which Zimbabwe is a party to, right? The national budget must ensure that we are in line with the Dakar Declaration, which says that at least 13% of the total national budget should go to education. The budget must make sure that at least 13% of the national budget goes to agriculture, because we're an agro-based economy and we want agro-processing industries. But we're not just saying 15% to healthcare for the sake of 15%. No, 15% of that healthcare should also be clear. The budget lines in what they call, there's a creature called the blue book, where the minister, so, oh God, that's where the lot of trickery and treachery goes on in this country. The blue book is where because if you want to hide anything from an African, sadly, put it in a book. That big voluminous book called the blue book that the minister, is where the criminality, not criminality, but where the treachery, where the skills of hiding things from the public takes place. We want to see the blue book clearly saying that of the 15% allocated to healthcare, it's not going towards the recurrent expenditure, because the midterm review said Ministry of Health was allocated 28 billion zig, but only 25% was disbursed by July 2025. But of that 25%, 70% of the same was going to salaries. That's why we are in crisis, because we don't have hospitals, we don't have clinics, we don't have cancer machines. But the same government is saying we collected 30 million US dollars since the introduction of sin taxes, but they've only procured one cancer machine. So where is the rest of the money? These are questions young people should be asking. So we need to see allocation versus disbursement matrix. Because the minister can say, I've allocated $1 billion to healthcare. But if we are not going to see the matrix of allocation versus disbursement, you have allocated by April 2026, you should be telling us of the 1 billion allocated to healthcare, how much has been disbursed? Because if you are to do an analysis, my friends, my fellow Zimbabweans, of the 2025 national budget, from Professor Mtuli figures himself of July, as of 31 July 2025, of the total 200 and something billion ZIG budget, only 35% was disbursed to line ministries. And ironically, the minister blames that on ministries, and he argues that ministries are late in submitting what are called financial requisitions. And he then says, because also of the shrinking revenue base. So you can say we have budgeted $1 trillion. It's one thing to allocate, it's another thing to disburse. We should look out for that. Thanks so much. Sorry for taking your time, but thanks very much.